Let's take it back to an old time though. Let's kind of go back to, what was it, 1993?
Yes.
Recently released, just yesterday as we're recording, is the Becoming a Spectacle, the WrestleMania 9 documentary.
Damn, that was smooth.
It was good. We'll try not to spoil anything, but I mean, it's 1993. If you haven't,
it's happened,
right? And I don't think there's any groundbreaking new stuff. It was just great. Kind of the same reason, and like when we talked about on our bonus take of there's so much content out there, but I'm always gonna watch the rival shows and the greatest moments type shows, because even if and Stephanie's Places is another one too. Like, they're not the best shows put all together. But God, I love watching that old footage every time. And it's usually shot well, and they're using great clips. And this one, at least from what me, was a lot of footage that we hadn't seen. I remember the pay-per-view live, but I was not, I was still 10 years old because it was in spring of 93. Or I'm 11 years old, So I was a kid, but I feel like this was more in like your wheelhouse. I kind of want to know what you thought of it. What was your memory of watching the show live? I have vague ones, but what was it? Yeah. What did this mean to you?
This is my 27-year-old time period.
Okay. So right in that wheelhouse.
We used at this point, we had gathered at my friend's house every month, the same four guys watching the pay-per-views from both channels, both divisions, both companies, maybe be better. And 1993 was an interesting one because this is the first time they were really outside. And in the I'm going to spoil the documentary. If you don't watch it, it's your fault.
Yeah,
this is the one. It's in the parking lot,
right?
And this was the first time that they actually shot behind-the-scenes footage, which you'll see in the documentary. And the wrestlers didn't really know how to take it because they never had that before. So we got to see that from that point of view. And from my point of view, when it happened, it was a pretty big deal because it was from Vegas and it was outside. And I guess the attendance was only 16,000 and change, but it seemed a lot bigger to me at the time. And I enjoyed watching it with my buddies at the time. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, one of the shots, because most of the shots that you see are from inside the arena, and it is a packed house. It does look big. They do that one kind of like, I guess back then I was gonna say drone shot, but let's be real, it was a helicopter shot back then. And yeah, it does that the long, I guess, like the one apron side, the longer side of crowd, it doesn't goes back as far as it looks on from inside. It kind of just stops and it's not as deep. But I always knew they had to build that to kind of make it happen to get that arena in there. I just didn't realize that they literally had to. I thought they kind of like build attachments onto an existing kind of situation like they do. Like sometimes you'll see that in sports where they'll see the temporary stand or something like that. But no, they just took over the parking lot and really, I mean, made it their home, I guess. Like for me, I remember thinking it's strange that it was during the day. And I remember, for me, the things I remember the most, because I was 10 years old, is the entrances on like Bobby Heenan, obviously backwards on the camel, and like Macho Man. And then because Undertaker was my favorite by then, I remember the Giant Gonzalez and the chloroform. And even me as a kid then, I'm like, what is this guy in the suit? Why is he
the worst?
Yeah, I can't even imagine being someone in my 20s and seeing that and thinking like, what the hell is this?
Even when Bruce tried to explain how it was supposed to look, it was still going to be stupid.
It really was. There was no way that was going to look good.
Everybody out there is giving it their 100% gimmick and going through everything. And you got this clown coming out with freaking a bodysuit on. And I'm like, I'm 27, dude. You're insulting me, and I'm not that smart at the time. I'm stupid.
I was 10, and I don't think I realized at the time that I felt insulted, but it was like, even I was like, the fuck is this? Like, this is not. Yeah. And Undertaker with the Vulture too. I thought I would say the footage that's probably at least the newest and most like kayfabe breaking is the rehearsal footage.
Yeah.
That's not something that you see ever. Like even nowadays, they show slight little things, and it's usually like Triple H kind of showing how he wants to do it. But that was pretty cool to see, and especially how it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, good. That's how it led into Hogan and the and his glasses in the eye. But what were you gonna say?
This is the first time that WWF at the time actually did a theme show. Like we take it for granted now.
Right.
This is the first one. This is it. This is the beginning of the whole thing.
Yeah, and I didn't I guess I mean you knew that, but you didn't really. I mean, it didn't really hit me till whoever they had a lot of talking heads on this show, which I thought was cool. How they brought in different ones from different times and kind of built in. But I didn't realize that. But whenever whoever said it, they did. You think back and it's like, yeah, I mean, 8, 7, they're all. I mean, I guess 4 and 5 kind of were. They did a lot of stuff from the casino in Atlantic City. I remember the was it probably Tuesday night or was it Primetime Wrestling with Gorilla and Robbie Heenan? He was getting kicked out of places and not tipping and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't anything like this where they had the Roman theme and they had togas and. And now moving forward, they've kind of all at least had some sort of theme. Some are a little bit less than others. There's some years where they really, really dive into it, and other years where it's not quite as much. But
how would you like to have been Jim Ross?
I was just gonna say, that was kind of the lead into. I guess that is the big spoiler of the show. The one thing that surprised me is that Jim was on it. And
I remember Jim being there.
I mean, interviewed. They actually interviewed him as a talking head and didn't have like a. Because if it's, I mean, they have to do it for legal purposes of when it was filmed. Like this was filmed in 2017. This was filmed in 2020. Like that was he was part of the filming for this. I mean, he's not on it for very long, but that was interesting to see. Because I mean, like, obviously the big talk of the world is Lex Luger being inducted and wants Sting, and it's going to be DDP, but. I was surprised. Like when I heard his voice, I was like, I expected it to be an older clip from some other time, but that was recent. That was cool to see. I mean,
dude, that was the one thing we were all sitting around because we had watched WCW together all too.
Right.
Also. So we had seen Ross on WCW. And all of a sudden they go down and they're like, let's kick it to our newest colleague, Jim Ross. And we're looking at each other going, what the hell?
Right. And like
we
he was,
know.
Yeah. And it wasn't like he had been, like there for a bit. He had been NWA since Mid-South.
This was his first day in WWE.
And he's in a toga.
Yep.
And he can't see the monitor. Hey, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, if you get through that trial by fire, if you get through this is your first day, moving forward, your career will be a little easier, I guess.
And this is one of the instances where I actually believe Hogan.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
That's not a punch.
Oh, no. The way how deep it is, I'm not sure if the Sea-Doo hit him is where he said it did, like of how hard. But I'm sure he didn't like accidentally hit the latch with his thumb. I'm sure he was being stupid and trying to impress somebody and did something dumb and flipped himself off the thing and got hit. Right? It looks like it was kind of like maybe like even like the handle of one of those things or whatever.
That's what I was gonna say. Good call.
Right? With how deep it was, especially there's like those shots where it's up close where you see like. It's not just like the eye around it. Like it's the actual eye is like deeply bruised. So that's more of like a point. Yeah, no, that was.
I wasn't buying the whole thing where he got punched. I was like, nah, I don't think so.
No, I was like maybe an elbow, like a like a back.
I've been punched in the eye. I know what it was.
Yeah, it's gonna say, but most people have been punched in the face at least once or twice, and I've actually been elbowed in the face playing soccer. Actually, I took a nasty one, and like. Yeah, even that, and I guess mine was a little bit lower, but still, like, yeah, you're not getting that deep of it without something. I don't think it happened exactly the way he said it because it's Hogan, but yeah, it was definitely some sort of jet ski accident of him being an idiot.
Now that was a weird time period too, because as we're watching, like they even mentioned it, they were turning the page from the old talent to the new talent, and the whole show was going to the new guys, HBK, Steiners.
The new generation.
Yeah. And then we saw the ending of the show is Hart losing it to Yokozuna, which I knew was going to happen. I had a feeling it was going to happen. Didn't know, of course. But then they brought Hogan back out, and we all looked at each other like, Well, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of the show.
Yeah, no, that
They
really.
really was really was a kick in the ass for Bret Hart too.
Yeah, you can see it still hurts him. It's still bitter. And I mean, we all love Bret Hart, and but he's a bit of a mark for himself. But this is one of those times where it's like,
Wouldn't you be though?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh no, 100%. He's well deserved, and he has earned it all. He's he's the best technical. That's why I always say, like, the Mount Rushmore story. People just put their top 4, and it's like, that's not what Mount Rushmore actually is. It's Mount Rushmore is, the president who started the country, the one who wrote the Constitution and Declaration, the one who ended slavery, and then the one who's taken us into the future. So if you look at the like that, so I always think of, like, there's got to be a best overall, like a best technical wrestler, a best character, you know what I mean? So I would always put Bret as, like, he's the best technical wrestler ever. Like, nothing he did ever looked fake. It always looked real. It always looked tight. And that's got to be his mindset of how serious he took it. And that's why, there's very few people who don't respect Bret Hart. even Goldberg, when they have their tiffs, he's like, I respect the guy still. That's what Bret earned.
I think he probably would have been much better with the fact if he would have just lost it to Yoko.
Oh, absolutely.
And Hogan wouldn't have been involved, and then maybe Hogan could.
Hogan shouldn't have been involved in that at all. That was a desperation Vince move that we know that Vince did sometimes. He just panicked.
I come back to the fact that the tickets weren't selling.
Yeah.
And once they announced Hogan, the tickets sold.
Yeah.
So I kind of understand where Vince was coming from. But
and you see that some of those fans, that's one of those casual things. Like, even back then, there was diehards and casuals. People try to say there's not the casual fan, but you could see they did the interviews with certain people afterwards, and you could tell that I think one of the guys you could tell was an actual fan, but he probably was just a super Hulkamaniac. But like that, the mom that they interviewed and a couple other the kids, they're periphery wrestling watchers. They'll watch it when they see it, or they'll see a commercial. Like, they know Hulk Hogan. And to them, he's still 1988 Hulk Hogan that just slammed Andre, even though it's 5 years later. And, everything's kind of changed. And so I get it in that sense. But looking back on it now, as people who watch wrestling every show and are diehards with it, it's kind of like, it was a rough move. I mean, I understand why, because follow the money, especially then, because that was when money was starting to dip a bit. That was, they always say, what is it, like 94, 95 were 2 of their worst ever years financially. And well, that doesn't just happen January 1st, 1994 is my point.
Yeah, it's tough to grasp the concept that you had this big show, your WrestleMania, your Super Bowl, and you've only sold, like, what did the guy say, like 2,000 tickets?
Yeah, it was that was the initial one. I'm sure between there and the Hogan announcement, more were sold, but yes, that was the initial whenever they do here's the initial on sale. Like, I'm sure that was probably 1 to 2 weeks after or whatever. And he even said we had to push, most of that was sold at the beginning, like, probably like 1,500 of it was sold that first day or weekend from the diehard.
And he was scared to go tell Vince that.
Yeah. He's like, I'm still scared now. That's how scary. That tells you all of everything you ever need to know about Vince and why people in the company are much happier now moving forward, no matter what stupid dirty reports come out.
I get what Vince did bringing Hogan in,
sure.
But I wouldn't have put the belt on him.
Exactly. There was no need. There was no need to do it there. It really wasn't. I mean, if there was it just didn't make any sense, especially where you were gonna have Yoko and Bret. That could have been your program for the next couple of show or pay-per-views or whatever. But that was, and that's even too where Hogan, when he talks about it, he's like, oh, well, I was just gonna drop it to Yoko at the next pay-per-view. He's acting like it's now, where Backlash is gonna be in 4 to 6 weeks. Like, this is back in a time where there wasn't pay-per-views every single month. This is like, were they even doing the In Your Houses yet at this point? I'm not sure. But either way, like, major title defenses weren't happening on all those pay-per-views. Like, it wasn't going to be, this was March 93. There wasn't going to be by, late April, early May was going to be another show for Hogan to drop the title to Yoko. So just more of Hogan's, playing with the truth.
Yeah, it was one of the few times we left my buddy's house going, what
the fuck?
Why?
Yeah.
We had all thought it was done and we were moving on. So
yeah, no, and especially with the way the match ends, and plus Brett's got it out. It's one of those things that Cornette always talks about. It's like, hey, you can lose a match, just have it out. Like, you can still look strong. And obviously the salt in the eye is a major one. So it was great. It was just to then take a giant crap on it with having him do it again to take out Yoko, and Hogan also too. He wins in freaking cowboy boots. He's not even wearing wrestling shoes. He's wearing freaking cowboy boots. Yeah.
You mentioned it.
The whole thing's terrible.
You had just mentioned it. Brought me back.
Nice.
Remember when Hart says that Mr. Fuji wasn't ready, so they had a stall with the salt throwing. Yoko forgot where he was, and he lost track of the match, and Fuji wasn't ready to throw the salt, so they got all screwed up. And oh man,
Brett, and I've heard Brett talk about that before. I feel like they did a Dark Side episode on Yoko, didn't they? Or like a biography. I don't know. There was something recently. It might have been one. I think it might have been the A&E biography.
Yeah,
where Brett was talking about it, and he was saying how, up until that point, it was the best match with Yoko, but then Yoko, like he said in this one, he just ran out of gas. And when you run out of gas, you run out of gas, especially like at that size. It's not like you've got reserve tanks, and never mind that, like, even like the buildup, like you can't not be full of adrenaline and anxious going into your WrestleMania main event, especially when you're winning the title. So, the fact that the match went as long as it did is still a credit to his athleticism, even at 550 pounds or whatever the hell he was.
Yeah, all in all, a great way to spend an hour and 40 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I'm still not used to the time change here. So I was thinking SmackDown started at 6 and I timed it to like watch the documentary, have a little time, and then SmackDown. And then it was like 5 minutes to 5. And I'm like, oh crap, SmackDown. So I'd watched the first, I pretty much split it. Like I watched like the first 50 minutes, give or take. And SmackDown was good and I enjoyed it, but I was immediately like, the moment it ended, I'm like, give me back this documentary. I wanted to finish it. It was great. And I
watched it all this morning, so I promised you I would. So I watched it all before we on.
That was the thing, is when I was watching it, I thought about you immediately. I'm like, oh, this is your wheelhouse.
Oh yeah.
Because the late 20s is that period. Like, actually, it's funny you say that. I forget. I think I was either 26 or I was either 27 or 28 when I went to WrestleMania 26 when it was here. So I was right. That's that age for the perfect wheelhouse of like into it and enjoy it. And I went with one of my best friends, who's still one of my best friends to this day. He actually was with me when we did the meet and greet with Joe Hendry last month or 2 months ago now. That was just perfect. So we both highly recommend the documentary. I'm assuming most people are going to watch it, especially this is that time period where most wrestling fans give me all the WrestleMania content possible, which I see the WWE Vault channel on YouTube. Shout them out. They've been releasing stuff left, and every time I turn YouTube on, there's a new behind the scenes of WrestleMania greatest entrances for 3 hours, WrestleMania's best matches for 5 hours. It's awesome.
Fun. It's a fun time of year.
It's our Christmas. So awesome. But I really enjoyed that documentary and can only recommend it for folks for sure. So the next topic